Larry Fine was an icon of American comedy by playing Larry in over 200 short films, feature films, and TV episodes of The Three Stooges. But how did he get his start in life? What was his journey to becoming one of the Three Stooges? And why did he sadly live out his final years in a wheelchair? Let's look back at Larry Fine's life and career and remember his incredible legacy. Larry Fine's early life and career. Larry Fine was born Louis Feinberg into a Russian Jewish family on October 5, 1902 in Philadelphia. His parents ran a jewelry and watch repair shop where young Larry spent much of his time. During his childhood, he accidentally burned his arm with acid. The acid was used to test a piece of jewelry for its gold purity. Larry mistook the acid bottle for a drink and picked it up to drink it. But before he could, his father knocked the bottle away and some of the acid burned Larry's arm. This caused severe damage to his arm and weakened his mobility. The muscles in Larry's arm had become weak, and this had taken its toll on his overall health. His parents decided he should take up violin lessons to improve muscle strength. He took regular lessons and became very proficient in the instrument. He fell in love with playing the violin and decided to become a professional violinist. While still in his teens, he began performing violin in vaudeville theaters. He began working up the ranks of performing in vaudeville and soon became a prominent figure in the industry. By the time the 1920s came around, he graduated to becoming a master of ceremonies for vaudeville performances and live music performances. In the mid-20s, he served as master of ceremonies at the Rainbow Gardens in Chicago. It was here where he met Shemp Howard and Ted Healy. These gentlemen were prominent vaudeville figures, and soon they would work together to create some of the most iconic characters in American comedy. As the 1930s approached, Larry also began appearing in films. He had a small role as a fireman in the film Soup to Nuts, which also starred Ted Healy and Shemp Howard. 3 years later, he had a small role in the short film Nursery Rhymes and an uncredited role as a wedding singer in the feature film Turn Back the Clock. Before we tell you more about Larry Fine's life and career, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. The Three Stooges in Larry's career. In 1933, Larry Fine starred as a character, also named Larry, in a short film titled Beer and Pretzels. It was the first time the world was introduced to show manager Ted Healy and the hapless Three Stooges. The film follows Ted Healy and the Three Stooges, who get thrown out of a theater due to Ted's behavior annoying the ladies. They then get a job at a restaurant and all hell breaks loose due to their silly antics. The short film was a hit, and this was the launch of the Three Stooges. For the next 37 years, Larry appeared in over 200 short, feature, and TV episodes featuring the Stooges. His role as Larry is what made him a huge star and took him to heights that his career as a violinist couldn't, although he did play the violin in a few Three Stooges productions. While Ted Healy and the Three Stooges all became stars, Larry had a special place in the hearts of audiences. Larry was the quote-unquote straight man among the Three Stooges. He was the middle brother of the Stooges and remained in the role throughout his career, as the third Stooge changed throughout the history of the troupe. The character of Larry was much like Larry Fine himself. He was seen as a goofy yet affable fellow whom everyone loved. He acted in several short and feature films throughout 1933, which was the year he became a star. A mention should be made of his few roles outside the Three Stooges, following his step into the limelight. He and other members of the Stooges, as well as Ted Healy, often acted together, and there were a few times when they played characters with different names. Larry Fine played a piano player named Harry in the feature film Dancing Lady. This was a hit romantic comedy musical starring Clark Gable and Joan Crawford. He also starred alongside the Stooges in the feature film Mert and Marge, where they also played a different version of their now famous characters. This time, the Stooges were Mullen's helpers. This was followed up by playing the Three Julians in the 1934 comedy crime film Fugitive Lovers. Fine was best known for playing Larry, one of the Three Stooges. He played Larry in several short films for the remainder of the 30s. Most of his appearances with the Three Stooges were in short films and the occasional feature film, most notably Swing Parade of 1946 and Gold Raiders, released in 1951. The Three Stooges also made occasional TV appearances in their characters on popular shows such as The Ed Wynn Show and The Eddie Cantor Comedy Show. They also each played a servant on one episode of the variety show The Frank Sinatra Show. Larry also had a small role as a fireman in the hit feature film It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. In the 1960s, the troupe starred in their own TV show The New Three Stooges. Larry Fine's final acting role was in the TV pilot Cook's Tour. In this pilot, the Three Stooges decided to retire. And as fate had it, this was actually when Larry had no choice but to retire from acting. Larry's life and final years. Larry Fine lived a great life outside of his showbiz career. He met his wife Mabel in the early 20s when he began his career in vaudeville. She too was a performer in vaudeville, and they got married in 1926. They often went out and enjoyed the excitement that a life in showbiz promised. They lived in hotels and didn't settle into a house until the 40s. They also enjoyed fine dining and had a rich social life. One of Larry's challenges was that he had a troubling addiction to gambling. He would often gamble huge sums of money at the horse races or try his hand at playing gin rummy. Often this was to no avail, and his gambling debts almost forced him to declare bankruptcy. He was also known to be generous with lending his money to other actors, never requesting them to repay him. There were many harrowing events in Larry's life as well. His son John died in a car crash at age 24 in 1961. Almost 6 years later, Mabel died of a heart attack when she was only 63. This left Larry and his daughter Phyllis, who was in her late 30s. Larry's health began to decline shortly after his wife's death. In 1970, while working on Cook's Tour, he suffered a stroke. This paralyzed the left side of his body, and all of a sudden his performing career came to an end. He spent his final years living in the Motion Picture Country House, a retirement community for professionals in the motion picture industry. His health had declined so severely that his paralysis traveled throughout his body. He spent the last 5 years of his life in a wheelchair. While this was a sad state for Larry and his fans, he still tried to entertain his fellow patients at the retirement community. During this time, he also spoke to writer James Corone, who wrote Larry's autobiography, aptly named Stroke of Luck. Even in his harrowing state, Larry Fine never lost his sense of humor. He would occasionally get visits from fans of the Three Stooges and was always welcoming to them. He stated later in life that though working on the Three Stooges was hard work, he was grateful for it and enjoyed it. He sadly suffered a few more strokes throughout the early 70s. He died January 24, 1975, at age 72. While it's been over half a century since we've lost Larry Fine, he's still remembered as one of the greatest performers in American comedy. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you have a favorite episode of the Three Stooges? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.